Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Tech surge. Best and brightest. Younger people will not immediately connect best and brightest. Tech surge, you can recall the surge of the second Bush administration, the surge in Iraq. The word surge is associated with desperate measures by the President of the United States when policies have run off course. Best and brightest is a term that refers to a very famous book. David Halberstam, the late David Halberstam's book about his time reporting for the New York Times in Vietnam, The Best and Brightest. That is a way of talking about the deep irony of a failure of policy in the United States. The President of the United States remarks in the Rose Garden, a beautiful day in Washington. Behind him, so-called applicants and enrollees of the Affordable Care Act. More than one of them, however, have not enrolled, intend to. More than one of them had odd stories about their experience on the website. The president, in the course of his remarks, did not explain what I and my colleagues have been carefully reporting anecdotally these last weeks, that the government's created website, the healthcare.gov, is a dysfunctional creation, very large, very expensive, of an Obama administration that has had 3 years to develop an interface that acts like Amazon's or eBay's or Facebook, just simply connects with you and lets you back in. Now, there are a lot of details to give to this, but today it's politics. So I welcome Francis Rose of In Depth with Francis Rose at Federal News Radio, and Lara Brown, a political scientist at George Washington University. Francis, I begin with you. The president's remarks today. Eventually, he came to giving out a 1-800 number. We're told by reporters who are sitting there with their iPhones, nothing much to do, it's a beautiful day, you're listening to the president, that when you dialed the 1-800 number, it was either busy or eventually, through a series of punching numbers, directed you to healthcare.gov. Late in the day, we had a report that Verizon is being called in to assist the emergency atmosphere at the White House to help with the healthcare.gov ACA launch. Francis, we don't have it yet, but it looks like the president is moving people back towards Ross Perot time, 1993. Call 1-800. Tell George H.W. Bush you don't like him. Is this back to the future? Is the White House ironical about this? Is the federal government? Good evening, Francis.
Good evening, John and Lara. Yeah, this is kind of weird, John. It's almost surreal because my fellow geeks and I who follow federal government information technology projects are trying to figure out how this is happening in an administration that, at least in campaign mode, was so technologically forward. And one of my colleagues in the media here said, I guess they're finding out that governing is not quite the same as campaigning. And I thought that was kind of an ironic, interesting statement, 4.5, 5 years into an administration. But that appears to be the problem here. It was a lot easier to claim that they could get all of these various networks to talk to each other than it was to actually make them talk to each other. And that seems to be at the core of this. It's not just the capacity problem that Secretary Sebelius and President Obama said it was at the beginning.
The word glitches has irritated for several weeks because this is not glitches. This is a big system. It failed big. It's going to continue to fail big. We had estimates from the New York Times yesterday that there are 100 million lines of code in this, which is 5 times the size of our largest banks when they have websites. We had estimates from the New York Times that there are 5 million lines of code that need to be rewritten. Francis, you have reported carefully the federal government's failure to deal with digitalization of its product these last 10 years. Does this sound like the FBI? Does this sound like the Coast Guard?
Yeah, this sounds like a lot of these problems, John, that have permeated throughout federal information technology through administrations of both parties. I spoke today to an official from a former administration that showed me a report that detailed very expensive information technology failures and how to avoid them in the future. The report was delivered to the chairman of the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee, Fred Thompson, in 2001. These are problems that have been around in the federal government for years and years, and nothing seems to change, John.
Lara, good evening to you. The political scientist in you, I call upon you because policies have failed out of the White House before. I have already pointed to the surge in 2007. It wasn't enough, we know now, to win on the battlefield when you'd lost the American people. And best and brightest, this goes to the Tet Offensive 1968, Vietnamization 1972. It's not enough to win on the battlefield or even stay even with a primitive country that is fighting you with weapons given to them by Moscow and Beijing if you've lost the American people. Has the president lost the American people, Lara? Can you measure where this is for policy and the American people listening?
Well, I think there is a reality, and the polls are showing it, that the majority of people, or at least a plurality in many of these polls, are opposed to the current sort of rollout of Obamacare and do believe that these problems with the website are sort of indicators of larger issues. That said, one of the things that happens is with this large number of people who break out against sort of Obamacare and these websites, they're not fully certain as to whether or not they want to repeal the Obamacare law. Some have some more patience and are interested in waiting to see what the government can do to fix it. I think really when you get to the bottom of these polls, it comes down to this. Democrats may be expressing frustration with the implementation, but they are still in support of the plan. Republicans are certainly not in favor of either the law or the implementation. Independents are split. They don't necessarily like the law, but they're not sure where to go. And some of this comes out in the Pew poll that was released today, which actually shows that a plurality of Democrats, 44%, say the exchanges are working well, which compares with just 25% of independents and only 14% of Republicans who also think.
Let's underline that, Lara. 44% of Democrats believe the exchanges are working well, despite the evidence of going online and seeing that it doesn't work. In other words, these are partisan votes. These are not on the basis of their experience.
That's correct. And this is what I'm saying, is that no matter what the objective reality of this website, its problems, its likely future in terms of implementation and rollout, we are still going to see partisans split in their typical partisan ways. Democrats will support this initiative because it is President Obama's signature initiative. Right. Republicans will oppose it for precisely the same reason.
Francis, there's a timeline. Hollywood loves a clock. And the timeline is January 1st for the law to take effect. You must have health care or suffer the penalty. There are also some guesses as to how much time people need to apply, to pay, to be enrolled. The emphasis here is on you have 6 months. This is just 3 weeks gone. But my sense today is that the White House is making decisions on the fly, that there is no plan B yet, and that today was the first of several retreats. Did you hear it differently, Francis?
Well, I did. I heard a tone that indicates that they realize now the gravity of the situation that maybe they either didn't realize 3 to 6 months ago or realized and didn't want to admit 3 to 6 months ago. But I want to go back and tie that to something you said earlier, and that's the comment about these being glitches, which was what they were referred to early on. In the last week or so, I've spoken to 6 very highly placed leaders at information technology federal contractors. Half of them gave money to Democrats, half of them gave money to Republicans. Every single one of the 6 said, there's no way these are glitches. These aren't easy fixes.
Right.
This thing's a mess, and it's not going to get fixed in time to meet any of these deadlines.
Lara, I go to you. The American people are very tolerant, but will they tolerate being spun despite all evidence? How long, Lara? How long before the American people push back and turn off, just stop listening to the White House?
I would argue that the White House probably has 30 days.
Lara Brown of George Washington University. You heard at White House, 30 days. I think she's being generous. I think today was the first of maybe one more like today before you need to confront and be transparent about the failure of the website and the Affordable Care Act as you've presented it to the American people. Francis Rose of In Depth with Francis Rose at Federal News Radio. The website is like a war situation, a moving story, but there are facts. You cannot dance around the facts with polls. The website doesn't work. The 1-800 number doesn't much work. And you want us to go to the mails while closing post offices. I'm John Batchelor.